unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, the production of Souls and Liberty. I'm your host, Stephen Wynn. 55 days now until the election, and the dust is settling one day after the Trump-Harris debate in Philadelphia. Joining us is Jim Ellis and Trey Traynor. Trey, of course, is a member of the Federal Election Commission, but as always, he is joining us as a private citizen in a personal capacity, not as a representative of the FEC. All right, gentlemen, it's the day after the debate, and there's lots to talk about, basically. First of all, I'd like to ask a question about media manipulation and politicians peddling falsehoods. Last night, ABC, some are describing it as the Ambush Broadcasting Corporation. They basically displayed blatant bias against Trump. Conservatives, even a number of fair-minded moderates, blasted their moderators for continual bias against Trump. Many observers said that the moderators spent more time debating Trump actually than Harris did. For example, not only did they break their own rules by allowing Harris to interrupt Trump as he was asking a question about abortion, but they fact-checked Trump even as they allowed Harris to lie like a rug throughout the course of the evening. I've got a list of some of the many zingers that she told, so allow me to reference my notes because there were plenty of them. For example, Harris said that Trump plans to implement Project 2025 as policy during his second administration, were he to get elected. That is blatantly false. Project 2025, of course, is a set of policy recommendations authored by the Heritage Foundation, but Trump is not the architect of that plan and has repeatedly denied any intent to implement Project 2025 as policy. Harris said that Trump would basically deny infertile couples access to in vitro fertilization. And of course, while this would be wonderful from a Catholic perspective, it is a false claim. Likewise, she said that Trump would sign a national abortion ban into law. Again, false. Harris said that Trump praised neo-Nazi elements that had gathered in 2017 in Charlottesville. She said he praised them as, quote, fine people. Again, that's false. She also implied that Trump basically, he warned Americans to expect, quote, a bloodbath if Harris were to be elected. She suggested that he was hinting at a violent physical conflict when, of course, he was the bloodbath he was referring to was economic in nature. Of course, if she were to implement her Marxist policies, we would encounter an economic bloodbath in this country. So basically, first question to you, Trey, just give me your thoughts on this really disgusting display of media manipulation.
Well, thank you, Stephen, for the question. For me, it was really interesting to see what was happening, and it was almost as if Donald Trump was debating the moderators, not debating Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, frankly, was there to affirm the positions that ABC has taken. And the reason they couldn't fact check her, just on the list of things that you just went through, they couldn't fact check her on those because they have peddled in that same material themselves. And so for her to say those things was an affirmation of what they themselves had already put out to the public. I mean, ABC has been shown to be one of the leading advocates for Kamala Harris and her election with regard to media entities that are out there and the information that they're peddling. So it's really hard to fact check someone when you believe what they're saying is true, and more importantly, you've told the American public that what she's saying is true. It would have gone against everything that is in the in the DNA of the Disney Corporation for them to have done anything else but allow those lies to continue to move forward.
Absolutely. Jim, same question.
Well, I agree, of course, with a lot of what Trey said, but and there's really no surprise. I mean, is anybody really surprised that ABC and those moderators would be advocates for Kamala Harris? And I think the big mistake that was made from Trump's last night was he knew that going in, and he said it many, many times it was going to be 3-1, but he should have been better able to sort of satisfy the question and then steer it to his points. And he was, he wasn't consistent in how he was delivering the points he wanted to make. And he really needed, this was his great opportunity to continue to contrast his record as president versus what her record is as vice president and the Biden administration, and what her record will be if she were to be elected. And I think he really failed to do that in a coherent way. I mean, he kind of danced around it. And there were many issues left on the table that he could have exploited. All of these issue changes that she's made since she became the Democratic nominee. And we've gone through it many, many times on this program. First of all, the Biden cover-up. And he did go into that, which I thought was good. But fracking, her positions on Israel, the single payer for health care, the defunding the police, and the fact that she was the border czar. He touched on all of that, but it wasn't delivered in a coherent way and repeated in a coherent way where people could, I think, really follow the message in the way they should have. And I think it was a big disappointment for Trump, and he might not get another chance. This may be the last debate.
And if I could follow up, Stephen, it's really interesting what we saw last night with the media playing into this. I think it'll tell in what the ratings were for the viewership. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people tuned in early, and as soon as they saw the media bias that was taking place, I think they tuned it out. The American public has very little appetite for the media bias and being directed in one direction or the other. Again, the American people want to decide for themselves who the best candidate was, and I think that's why they tuned in, was to get a feel for what the policy positions of Kamala Harris were, to hear a reaffirmation of former President Trump's policy positions. That's what they wanted to hear, and instead what they got was a production of basically, I mean, it's a Disney Corporation, ABC is. It was a Disney production of a presidential debate. You had Kamala Harris, who had rehearsed her lines for 50 days, and she came on and delivered those lines very well. You had two paid actors who came on, and their job was to get Donald Trump riled up, and that's exactly what they did, was get him riled up. And unfortunately, I think he played a little bit into that in allowing his positions to be curtailed by the just abject interference of the media.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I was a bit disappointed in his performance. He at times seemed rattled when Harris would bait him. Too often, for my taste, he took the bait. I was hoping to see a Tulsi Gabbard like takedown of Harris, and that really didn't materialize like I was hoping it would. How do you think that this could affect voter? The voter choice, viewer perception, and so forth?
For me, what we saw last night, we saw that Donald Trump is not really good at being a politician, but is really great at getting things done and pinpointing where the problems are and what the solutions are. We also saw that Kamala Harris is really great at being a politician and has no ability to get anything done. And so from a voter standpoint, I don't think that this debate has changed much as far as who's on whose side. Those that came into the debate supporting Trump are still supporters of Trump. Those that came in supporting the vice president are still supporters of her. And ultimately what this is going to do is put the onus on both campaigns to turn out their voters, the people that support them. And I think this still is a turnout election. But again, what the media bias shows is that the apparatuses to manipulate this election, whether I don't want to say steal this election, but the apparatuses to affect the outcome of this election through means of the media, through means of the government resources and running elections, all still exist, and they were all on display last night to show that the media is still trying to put their hand on the scale of the outcome of this election.
I absolutely agree. Jim, same question to you.
Well, you know what really struck me was the tone of the debate, and it was set on the first question. The very first question was to Harris, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? The old Ronald Reagan line from the debate against Jimmy Carter. And she just ignored it and went on with her opening statement, basically. And I mean, if that didn't say volumes about this campaign, I don't know what did, because she honestly couldn't answer that question, because the answer to the question is obviously no. And unfortunately, Trump didn't pick up on that. I would have thought that the question next coming to him, he could have said a yes or no answer and then really gone after her for not answering the question about, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, Kamala? And the reason you don't answer it is because you know everybody's not. And that's the fundamental difference between the two of us. Then I was struck further on the watching Fox after the debate, the post-election. They had Senators Marco Rubio and then Ted Cruz on, and they were just fantastic about laying out what is before the American people and who is on what side. And I thought both of them, I wish they could have debated Harris, because it would have been no contest. But that's a type of message that has to be delivered. Succinct, clear, and an understanding of how this affects the average voter. I will have to agree with one thing that Harris made, a point that she made about Trump, is he never talks about what is going to help the people. He talks more about himself. And unfortunately, last night, I think she was correct on that.
Right, agreed. Something that is interesting to note is the fact that it seems that when actual facts about actual policies are discussed, it benefits Trump. CNN, for example, last night conducted a poll of viewers, and basically the key question was, who did they trust more to handle the economy? Basically, the pre-debate, going into the debate, 53% of respondents said they trusted Trump more. 37% said Harris. After the debate, after some substantive economic issues were discussed, Harris lost support among the viewers who tuned in, 2 percentage points. Trump picked up 2, and she lost 2. Trump had 55% support at the end, and Harris was down to 35%. So it's just, I thought that was interesting. It's just frustrating when every media personality, it seems, mainstream media personality, is running cover for her, and as a result, I think it places a greater responsibility on Trump and his team to get the facts out there. Because obviously Kamala can't run on her record; she has to lie about his as well as her own in order to leave the room standing, basically. So, what do you think that Team Trump should be doing now in the coming days to really drive home the message, the truth about the Biden-Harris record?
Well, I can hop in on this one, because it seems to me that it's got to be just a clear, succinct message. Let's take Pennsylvania, for example, which is one of the key states. The fracking issue is critically important. Western Pennsylvania has the greatest fracking operation and resources in the world, not just the United States, but in the world, as Trump pointed out. And Western PA, I would do nothing but talk about fracking. Dave McCormick, who is the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate, immediately upon Harris's nomination, came out with this great ad that shows all of these statements that she had made in the past, that she wanted to ban fracking and defund the police, on and on and on. I just use that tape over and over and over and over in the Western PA area. And then, of course, expand other types of messages that directly affect these areas in the key states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. There's your election right there. And if they can be very, very disciplined and succinct, and the point you made about the people believing that Trump is better at handling the economy than she is, they've got to zero in and make people understand, look what happened to the economy when Biden and Harris took over. And that just needs to be explained better. And then what Trump's going to do to fix it and how it affects the people.
Yes, absolutely. Trey, your thoughts?
Well, I want to take issue a little bit with something that Jim said about Trump not talking about the individual voters. And I think you can see that he was focused on individual voters, because anybody that had a bingo card that had the words bacon, milk, or eggs on it thought that they probably had a losing bingo card last night when they were playing the game. But Trump brought those economic issues home. He knows that the American people are struggling to make ends meet. Going to the grocery store is a painful experience under the Harris-Biden administration, and he was focused on that aspect of it. He was also very good at trying to pin the vice president down on what exactly her position on abortion is, trying to get a definitive answer. Is it abortion at 7 months? Is it 8 months? Is it 9 months? He knows, and the American people know, that nobody, the majority of Americans are against any type of late term abortion. And so, to be able to focus in on that particular issue, I think was important. And Jim hit on the other one that I thought was very important, is fracking. It is telling to me that she is not as confident coming out of this debate as some might think. And I think that's why she immediately was calling for another debate. She is still trying to do a very desperate effort to solidify the base of the Democratic Party, because there was so much of a focus on the abortion. I mean, the abortion issue took up a good deal of time and back and forth, and multiple follow-ups on the abortion issue. That means that ABC and the Harris campaign, in colluding with each other, know that they still have to solidify that wing of their party, that she is sufficiently on board with that. And then, of course, the major focus on fracking. I mean, she had to come out and say that she was against fracking, whereas all of the data shows that she is very much that she was in favor of fracking, but the data shows that she's very much against fracking. I mean, she has the most liberal record in the United States Senate of anyone on these environmental issues, and has even cast votes as vice president advancing environmental issues that would be detrimental to fracking. So she still has a lot of work to do to solidify her base, and I think that's why she's calling for another debate. And I think why the Trump team is coming out and saying that debate was a win for them, because if we're focused on issues that are bad for her, it's a win for the Trump team.
Yes, absolutely agree. I know that the vice presidential debates are not as consequential as the presidential, but they're interesting nonetheless. And frankly, I'd love to see Vance get a chance to clash with Walz, because I think Vance is a pit bull and he would do very well. Do you think we'll see anything like that materialize?
I think you definitely will see a vice presidential debate. I mean, I think that's the normal next step in this process, is to have that happen. And I think that you will see the dichotomy of these two campaigns played out very well in that, because while Kamala Harris is doing a snow job to try to get everyone to believe that she's changed her spots, Tim Walz is not. Tim Walz is only... He's on that ticket to solidify the left, and he's going to have to come out and be the leftist that he is. And I think J.D. Vance is going to have a great opportunity to exploit that. And at the end of the day, I think it will be very telling to help draw into clearer contrast these two campaigns.
All right. Well, Jim.
Actually, I think they do have the debate scheduled for October 1st.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, for the VP. So we'll see if it actually happens. You never know with this.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
If the Democrats and the media may pull out if they don't think it's going to help them. So,
yes.
But yeah, we'll see if there's another Trump-Harris debate. I'm not sure it would help Trump that much to have another debate. So it might be best just to move on and forget it and continue to deliver the message the way they need to through the campaign apparatus. And they're going to need some outside groups coming in to help out. That already started last night with one of the better ads I've seen in the whole campaign that came in right after the debate, calling out Harris on so many different things. But let's talk back too on the abortion question. I think Trump made a good point on that, but he needed to emphasize it a little bit more. And she's talking about not being clear on where she is on any restrictions on abortion. She voted for no restrictions, as every Democrat senator at the time did on the Schumer amendment, which was unrestricted abortion, period. Kamala Harris voted yes on that, as did every Democrat. But they're not being called out on that. And that's, again, we get back to discussion that we had yesterday about Republicans on the right of center being afraid to go after them on their extreme positions on abortion. I think Trump did that again a little bit last night, but he needed to really zero in. And that vote that she stated what her position is when she voted for the Schumer amendment, which was no restrictions.
Right. Yes, I wished several times last night that Trump was able to just take 30 extra seconds and really detail what basically is infanticide that the Democrats are supporting. You know, it's just, it would take 30 seconds to really detail for the American people what that means. You know, there are all these denials. Harris and the moderators, denying that abortion would ever be allowed, post birth. Well, it absolutely would. That's what the governor of Virginia talked about a couple of years ago. They've got him on recording saying that, video saying that. So I wish Trump would sharpen himself in ways like that, basically.
Well, Stephen, if I could on that, I agree with you that Trump probably could have been a little bit more Stephen-like with regard to some of the responses, but it's basic human nature to have the response that he had. And look, we know from the guy that got up off the ground in Pennsylvania, who had been shot at, yelling at the crowd to fight, we know that he's a fighter. And ultimately, that's what he was in last night, was a 3-on-1 brawl where he had to combat her, and he had to combat two moderators at the same time, not knowing which issue was coming next and not knowing whether his microphone was going to be turned on, turned off, what was happening. I mean, they did have some technical glitches with those things last night where the microphones weren't coming on and you could overhear Kamala Harris trying to interrupt him and those type of things. And so he literally was in a fight or flight situation. And so from that standpoint, for him to maintain his composure and talk about the issues to the extent that he did, I think was outstanding.
That's true. I can't argue with that. Yes, it was most definitely an unfair fight, 3 against 1. Yeah. And I wish he could have stayed a little bit more focused. But again, as you say, the fight or flight response when you're being ganged up on, it's very human to react the way he did.
But on the other hand, everybody knew it was going to be that way. And he knew going in, and he said it many, many times that it would be 3-on-1. So, the preparation on this kind of wasn't there. I mean, there was talk that he was just blowing off the preparation, and you just can't do that on these sorts of situations, and particularly when it's going to be so adverse to you. I mean, as he said many times, it's 3-on-1 going into this debate. It was. Everybody knew it would be. And it proved to be the case. So I kind of think that's on him. I really do.
All right, Jim, how, as our polling expert here, how long until we can see some polls released that show us whether there's any movement as a result of the debate?
Well, you see some flash polls, like you mentioned, CNN already had a flash poll out. And we'll probably see some of those this week for sure. The flash polls, I would not pay much attention to that until next week when things again kind of normalize. And then we see if things come back to where they are, which right now is basically a tie. Harris looks like she's up in most of these national polls. That doesn't mean a thing. What does matter is where the major states are. are. And Trump is really in better shape in almost all of those than he was in 2016. And we can't forget that. So they just continue to need to drive this message and point out the contrast between the two records and drive that home.
Very good. Very good. All right, gentlemen, got a closing question here. We are 55 days out now from the most consequential election in our nation's history. Where do we go from here? What can we expect over the coming weeks? Trey, question to you.
Well, I think what you'll see from the Harris campaign is a continued effort to push abortion as a major issue to try to nationalize this election. They have to do that in order to even gain seats in the House and to hold on to the Senate. They have to nationalize this election around abortion. Not sure how well that plays in the swing states, but that's what they have to do in order to work on controlling things in Washington, D.C. I think you're also going to continue to see her migrate away from her environmentalist positions so that she can maintain a position that on fracking in Pennsylvania. So that's what you'll see from them. I think what you'll see from the Trump campaign is a continued push to focus on the top issue, which is the economy. Continue to talk about the fact that this economy is very bad, that all of it is a function of the Build Back Better program that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden put together. And, with the secondary focus on illegal immigration. And frankly, he did a good job last night of bleeding in both of those two issues to how illegal immigration is also having a negative effect on the economy and helping to cause some of the inflationary things that we're seeing.
All right, Jim, the same question to you.
Well, and to build upon what Trey said, yes, I agree totally. They'll be making the huge push again on the abortion issue because it was a vote driver for them in 2022. But and what else are they going to say? I mean, they can't talk really about the economy unless they just flat out lie like they're doing. But I don't think that flies. People get, as we all mentioned before, what they're paying at the grocery store, how much things have gone up here in the past 4 years. People understand that. And that's why we'll see the emphasis on the abortion issue. Yesterday, by the way, we were on and we talked about the initiatives on the ballot in these 10 states dealing with abortion. There has been an update actually since yesterday. Missouri, I mentioned yesterday that the lower court had disqualified the abortion initiative from the Missouri ballot. Yesterday, after we got off the air, the state Supreme Court reinstated it, as I thought might happen. So we do have 10 states where the abortion issue, and it's mostly codifying abortion and enshrining it in these various state constitutions as their right. But the ones we really have to look at where the abortion issue is on the ballot, as Trump talked about in the debate, Arizona and Nevada. And they will use that, as Trey pointed out, almost exclusively, I think, in those two states to drive that turnout the way it came out in 2022. And while they're there, they, of course, vote for Harris and vote for all the other Democrats. So I think that's what we'll see in those critical states. But the states we've got to pay attention to ad nauseum again are Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. What happens there, and North Carolina, what happens there will largely determine the outcome of this election. And so we'll monitor the messages in those states and then drive this home to Election Day on November 5th. Really, we're going to be, as Sean Hannity pointed out on his show, early voting in Pennsylvania begins next week. So, and then by the middle of October, we'll see most of the nation already voting. And that's going to be important to monitor those early votes to see where the turnout is. It gives us a lot of clues as to what's going to happen on November 5th.
It's going to be a wild ride. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your analysis, and many thanks to our viewers. Please tune in tomorrow again when In Depth will return. I'm your host for today, Stephen Wynn. God bless you.